It's been nearly 2 years since the presidential election, but could today be the day that seals the fate of Republicans like Liz Cheney?
If she goes down to defeat in this battle, it begins the next phase.
As more election deniers prepare to take power, our team is in Wyoming. Meanwhile, the DOJ has done a lot more than search Mar-a-Lago.
Yes, a grand jury does exist. Yes, we are using it.
Got the latest developments from the FBI fallout, and our vaccines are still based on the original strain of COVID, but another country just approved an update.
What these new vaccines are going to do is shift us into the next phase of the pandemic.
When will the U.S. get new shots, and why did we request a different recipe? From ABC News, this is Start Here. I'm Brad Milkey. It's primary day in 2 states. Voters in Alaska and Wyoming will decide who will advance to November's midterm elections. And you might think, okay, 2 states, not huge populations. How much would it move the needle in congressional math? But one seat in the House particularly could represent a key moment in the history of the Republican Party.
It's been a tremendous honor, the highest honor of my professional life, to represent the people of Wyoming for the last 5.5 years.
Because Wyoming's only seat in the House is currently occupied by Liz Cheney. Of all the House Republicans who voted to impeach President Trump last year, most of them are gone already, and she's the only one left whose fate relies on GOP primary voters. So let's take you straight to Jackson, Wyoming this morning, where ABC's chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl is standing by. John, like I said, 435 seats in the House. Why is this one so important?
This is an epic battle in the war between Donald Trump and his most prominent, most ferocious, most effective critic within the Republican Party.
So I'm going to ask people for their vote. I'm going to work hard to earn that vote. But people need to know something about me. I will never put party above my duty to the country. I will never put party above my duty to the Constitution.
It is one battle in that war. It's a battle that Trump is almost certain to win.
And there is no rhino in America who has thrown in her lot with the radical left more than Liz Cheney.
After this primary, after the results come in, if Liz Cheney goes down to defeat, like so many of the other Republicans who have challenged Trump, including almost all of those who voted to impeach him, if she goes down to defeat in this battle, it begins the next phase, because Liz Cheney has made it clear that her mission, her political mission, is to make sure that Donald Trump never gets anywhere near the Oval Office again.
There's no question. I mean, a man as dangerous as Donald Trump can absolutely never be anywhere near the Oval Office ever again.
She has told that to me directly and flatly, bluntly.
Can the Republican Party survive in the way you've known it if Donald Trump is again chosen?
It can't survive if he's our nominee.
No.
No.
And that means doing everything she can to prevent him from being the Republican nominee. And if he were the nominee of her party, to do everything she could to defeat him.
And as far as today, is she going to lose? Like, is that the working assumption at this point?
The working assumption is that it would take a miracle for her to win in Wyoming.
I'm a Trump fan, and I think she just sort of turned her back on him.
You know, over 70% of the state of Wyoming voted Republican in the last presidential election, and she turned right around and voted against us.
It's a state where Donald Trump remains popular. It's an overwhelmingly conservative Republican state. Now, of course, Liz Cheney has spent her career as an overwhelmingly conservative Republican,
right,
who is the daughter of a guy named Dick Cheney, not to mention her mother, Lynn Cheney, very legendary conservative Republican figures here. But look, the last public polling here, and there's not much reliable polling here, had the race with a 22-point lead for Cheney's opponent. And when I asked her about it, actually, she said, well, at least we're gaining some ground, because most of the polls had showed it more than that.
You have people like Hunter Biden or Hillary Clinton or even Joe Biden who are not accountable or held accountable for the decisions and the bad acts that they undertake.
So yes, it looks like Hageman, who's the Trump-endorsed candidate, will have a victory here, which means Trump will have a victory here.
The people of Wyoming are going to tell her, Liz, you're fired. Get out of here. Get out of here.
She may be fired from her seat in the House representing Wyoming, but she is not going anywhere.
Well, yeah, and can you describe then what's happening in the party from this point on? Because let's be clear, like very few people think Donald Trump was a normal president. Or like you might love him, you might hate him, but he was not typical. That is clear. So could tonight's primary really mean there's not room in the Republican Party for the type of voter who's like, I don't love Trump? Like, is that type of voter and that type of representative no longer allowed here?
I wouldn't overinterpret this. This is Wyoming. This is the reddest of red states, the heart of Trump country. And there are other states that follow that as well. You know, and there's no question that Trump remains the dominant figure in the Republican Party, but there is a lot of unease with him. And his grip on the party is strong, it is tight, but there are indications that it may be loosening, and we don't know what the impact of whatever is going on in Mar-a-Lago now with the Justice Department investigation.
Why wouldn't they just ask the president if they have something there that they want? He surely would have provided it to them.
In the immediate aftermath, Republicans ran out to defend him and to attack the DOJ and attack the FBI.
You should never use the Justice Department on a political whim like this.
But that's been muted a bit since we've learned the details of all that material that the federal agents seized in Mar-a-Lago. So we'll see where his hold on the party is nationally. His hold on the party in Wyoming, though, is absolutely unquestioned.
All right, Jonathan Karl there in Jackson, Wyoming, as we get underway here today. By the way, Alaska's got some races to watch as well. Sarah Palin trying to win a seat in the House of Representatives, and Senator Lisa Murkowski trying to hold on to her Senate seat as well. Thanks, John.
All right, thank you, Brad.
Next up on Start here, speaking of election deniers, the president himself has been searched. Now his former lawyer is the target of an investigation. We're back after the break.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir. America's #1 most watched newscast. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
Here along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live. America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7. Straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes, Whoopi! This mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's what people don't see during the commercial break.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasure that day. I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good.
Oh, yeah, baby.
It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart that he did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The Boy Scouts knew they had a problem.
Parents gave the Boy Scouts the most valuable thing they had, their children. And they told parents, you can trust us.
They're unbelievably heartbreaking stories. So many of them are haunted by who they would have become if this never happened to them.
This is about how to move from victim to survivor.
When the detective says he confessed to abusing, I no longer had to prove to people that I was abused. I was free.
Elizabeth Holmes found guilty on 4 counts of fraud, facing the possibility of decades in prison. Now, we take you inside the courtroom and behind the scenes. The Dropout, Elizabeth Holmes on Trial. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
America's #1 news, ABC News. Most watched, most trusted, and streaming live to you anytime, anywhere, and free. This is ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Free to you 24/7. Watch America's #1 news whenever you want it, wherever you are, anytime. ABC News Live, streaming live and free on all platforms.
National parks are incredibly safe places. A crime will happen.
My wife has fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident.
There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now.
I was shocked.
Something's not right.
Right now, with so much at stake, Sunday mornings, this is the place. Taking on all the tough questions. Straightforward reporting. No spin, no hype, no bull. Thank you for making ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos the #1 Sunday morning news show versus the competition.
Welcome to This Week.
So we just heard about the political fallout from President Trump's term, but he and others around him are still dealing with the potential legal fallout. You remember that FBI agents collected several documents at Mar-a-Lago last week, even after Trump's team said everything had been turned over weeks ago. Well, yesterday we learned some of those documents were so sensitive, authorities now have to account for the full chain of custody to make sure none of this info was leaked to American enemies.
The investigation will likely include interviewing former Trump administration officials and may even involve checking for fingerprints on the recovered classified documents to better understand who might have had access to them.
Well, as we were wrapping our mind around that, investigators in the state of Georgia came out yesterday and said Rudy Giuliani, Trump's former personal lawyer, is now the target of a state investigation. And if all that wasn't enough, we got another revelation last night. Let's get into it with ABC's John Santucci, executive editorial producer with our investigative unit. John, the DOJ submitted this new court filing, which basically told the world what they were up to. What's happening there?
Oh, Brad, I mean, this was a mountain of things we learned from the DOJ. Well, first of all, they've actually told us that they have witnesses that are cooperating in their probe, and they want to make sure that the identities of these witnesses is protected because this is an ongoing investigation. They have said that they have brought this material to a grand jury, something we have heard before, but to actually see the Department of Justice confirm in a filing that, yes, a grand jury does exist. Yes, we are using it. And we have witnesses. I mean, this really shows us that this investigation is moving far faster and much further along than even we realized.
Wow. So, I mean, whenever you serve a search warrant, you have to say, like, crimes might have been committed. That's what we're following up on here. But when you start talking about a grand jury, John, does that mean we would see actual indictments over all this at Mar-a-Lago?
Well, I think we're a little far off from that because we don't know what the grand jury is being used for, right? A grand jury could be used to subpoena documents and records, something that we have heard rumors of and, again, seems like we're tracking in the right direction. It could also mean they have subpoenaed individuals for testimony to come in and talk to them, actually testifying about whatever it is they're looking into. We don't know that, right? But there definitely are breadcrumbs that are building into potentially this is moving forward.
Hey, as far as the search of Mar-a-Lago itself, Attorney General Merrick Garland clearly felt like he needed to put some information out there. Like there was a need for transparency in that moment. He asked a judge to unseal the search warrant they used. But then there's a question of what information they even gave to the judge to get the warrant in the first place. News organizations had asked for these documents, and now it sounds like the DOJ does not want that kind of transparency. Why?
So, Brad, that is a part of this new fancy word as we all become lawyers overnight called affidavit. And the affidavit would tell us more about sources, methods, reason, beliefs. It would give us a sense of what they've heard from witnesses. DOJ wants the witnesses protected, which maybe their identities are in the affidavit. So that would be a problem if it comes out there.
And revealing their identities, prosecutors said, could impact their willingness to cooperate
or expose them to threats.
But really, the affidavit would give a roadmap. This is where we're going. This is what we've gotten so far in our journey. Here's where we think we're going next. And that is something, A, it's part of an ongoing investigation, so they don't want to put that out there right now. But B, you don't really want to show your hand if you're the Department of Justice to, oh, gee, let's think about it. The people that you're potentially going after, which would be the Trump orbit at this point. So there is a lot of heat right now around this. And I got to tell you, Brad, even this update that we got last night, it's doing nothing to cool the flames.
Okay, and then lastly, can we talk about the investigation unfolding in Georgia? Because we've been talking about federal stuff so far. This is a state investigation, and it involves this idea of fake electors that, you know, in the aftermath of the 2020 election, you had a group of 16 people who gathered together in December 2020, called themselves electors, saying, like, we represent the state, and we've decided Trump won, Biden didn't. We are ready to ignore the vote and hand this state to Trump. Could Rudy Giuliani, the president's former personal lawyer, be held accountable for something like that? And if him, like, who else?
I mean, yeah, this is fascinating and definitely something we didn't see coming.
Rudy Giuliani has been informed he is considered a target of the criminal investigation in Fulton County that's examining efforts in Georgia to overturn the results of the 2020 election.
Giuliani has been slated to go and testify before this special grand jury. It's very unique, this grand jury down in Georgia, Brad. It's a grand jury that basically can do everything that every other grand jury in the world does, except, oh, wait, they can't indict you. Okay. It's a grand jury that's just going to put together a report on what recommendations they're going to give to prosecutors to move forward. But Rudy Giuliani's lawyers, as they've tried to push back and reject having Rudy go in to meet with this grand jury, have said, well, wait a second. What are we in this performance? Are we a witness, or do you think we're a target? And then we learned on Monday, Rudy's lawyers got a call from Georgia. Rudy's a target.
Wow.
This definitely changes the game for Rudy Giuliani, and it's a target in the sense of election interference.
So, for example, the recount being done in Georgia will tell us nothing because these fraudulent ballots will just be counted again.
Georgia's obviously been on Trump's mind from going back to when he lost the election. But where this actually is fascinating with Rudy is because it's all about a probe into fake electors. We know that the Fulton County DA, in addition to Rudy, Lindsey Graham, and others, has subpoenaed and demanded testimony from these individuals that were identified as fake electors. So it will be interesting once we get the report out of Fulton County what they do. But clearly, one of the things that they are looking to do is target Rudy Giuliani.
All right, we'll see if there's another shoe to drop, or however many shoes there are to drop. John Santucci, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Brad.
Recently, an acquaintance of mine returned to her office full-time for the first time since the pandemic relegated her to working from home. Well, within a day or two at the office, she immediately got COVID. She's fully vaxxed, she's doing fine, but it highlights the fact that vaccines are no longer preventing transmission of COVID like they once did.
If you are exposed to this variant, your previous immunity from vaccination and potentially other variants, likely non-Omicron variants, doesn't necessarily protect you in the same way as previous infections.
With each new variant, the average vaccinated person has less and less immunity. Well, yesterday, the UK became the first country on Earth to approve a new type of vaccine, a vaccine that was engineered with a more recent variant of COVID in mind. Let's check in with ABC's Sony Salzman from our medical unit. Sony, is this a turning point? Like, what does this vaccine do?
I think it is a turning point, Brad. I think what these new vaccines are going to do is shift us into the next phase of the pandemic, where kind of like the annual flu shot, each year or season, we have to kind of predict what the virus is going to do and engineer a vaccine that is the best defense against that virus.
Drug regulators in Britain have become the first in the world to authorize an updated version of Moderna's COVID vaccine.
The UK government just recently authorized a vaccine that is a combination shot. It's Moderna's combo shot. This is called a bivalent vaccine. And what it does is it still protects against that original Wuhan strain that emerged in 2020, but then it also protects against the newer BA1 Omicron strain. And so it combines both of those in the hopes of providing enhanced protection against the variants that are circulating right now.
Right. So Omicron obviously was the thing that where cases absolutely skyrocketed in this country because people just did not have the same level of immunity as this variant came onto the scene. So how did I get one of these vaccines, Sony? Like, I want one of these boosters. What's happening in the U.S.?
So it is coming to the U.S. too, but what we're going to get here is actually slightly different.
The goal, the FDA says, is to give people the broadest and strongest protection possible in anticipation of a wave of infections in the fall.
The U.S. FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, they looked at presentations from Moderna and Pfizer, and what they said is, that's all well and good, but even within Omicron, we have all these subvariants, right? So Omicron BA1 was the first Omicron subvariant, but now here in the U.S. and globally, actually, BA5 is the dominant variant.
BA5 means many of us are still going to get COVID, even if we take the precautions. That doesn't mean we're doing anything wrong. Unfortunately, this COVID is still with us.
What the FDA did is they asked the companies, can you go back and kind of, look at your formula again, retweak it a little bit again so that it's a better match against BA5. And that is the version that they have ordered. And the expectation is that that would be authorized in September or perhaps October, be available sometime around then in the fall.
So that sounds great. I guess that it would be like the more, the strain that's a little bit more recent. But will it work better? Because I got to say, Sony, I see school about to start, and I'm thinking, dang, it would be nice to get a new vaccine in play before kids are all indoors spreading it to each other's families. Is there a balancing act here between timeline and efficacy?
Well, just to set expectations, Brad, I do think it's really important to remember that even these vaccines that we're talking about, the ones that are retweaked and they're reformulated and they're better matches against these new variants, the virus itself has changed so much that we are not going to get a bulletproof vaccine that protects you against any breakthrough infection.
That's no longer the expectation for these vaccines.
That's no longer the expectation. That's exactly right. So, maybe at some point in the future, there is some really interesting vaccine science, early stages of development here. But for these vaccines and for the way that this virus has evolved, that is no longer the expectation.
This virus is going to be with us forever. It's really, really important that people build up their immunity against this virus. And so I've been very clear that getting vaccinated is one of the best ways that people have to protect themselves.
The expectation is, are they going to have higher efficacy, and particularly against severe illness, and also last longer so that kind of drop off doesn't happen as quickly. So that's the expectation here. But I want to be clear, either of these vaccines, whether you do a bivalent against BA1 or BA5 or anything to that effect, it's going to be better. Every scientist I've talked to has said this is the way forward.
I believe that we will be able to get to this once yearly dosing now because we have high levels now. It will probably even increase and mature over time.
We need to be updating the vaccines to be a better match for the variants that are circulating presently. But it's not going to be this kind of bulletproof approach where you have a vaccine that completely protects you against infection. That's not the expectation.
Gotcha. And in the meantime, we are hoping to see these Omicron-specific boosters here in the U.S. sometime in September. Sony Salzman from our medical unit. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Brad.
And one last thing. You know the show America's Funniest Home Videos? The premise of it was not that Americans love people getting hit in the groin. No, the real concept was based on a particular moment in American life. Suddenly, back in the late 80s, more people than ever had access to a video camera.
I don't care how much water you use. You can't wash the cute off this kid.
That's no longer a novelty. People take videos all the time. But the unscripted stuff, they're really too incredible to be real moments. They're not on iPhones. They're at our doorsteps.
We're looking at video doorbells. They let you pretend you're home when you're not and claim they can help catch thieves who steal packages outside your house.
Doorbell cameras are always rolling when we're at our best and at our worst. And so get this, MGM is rolling out a new show called Ring Nation, which will feature funny and uplifting footage caught on doorbell cams.
I can't reach it. It's okay, I saw it coming.
It's hosted by Wanda Sykes. But here's the thing to remember. After the inventor of Ring originally appeared on Shark Tank...
Sharks. Wouldn't it have been nice to know who was behind the door before you let me in?
my product, you can.
It was purchased by Amazon. Well, guess what? Amazon bought MGM Studios earlier this year. So think about it. This is now an Amazon company making a show about technology owned by Amazon. And it'll be up for syndication, meaning conceivably you could be watching this on Amazon Prime. This type of synergy, critics say, is an example of how a company that owns everything can start to normalize things like doorbell cams. After all, not everybody thinks they're as funny and cuddly as Ring Nation might suggest.
Amazon often gives out Ring data to law enforcement without the need of a subpoena or legal order, which is kind of scary.
When Ring camera footage started appearing in more court cases in recent years, racial justice advocates said this type of surveillance often has harmful effects. Say, nervous neighbors are complaining about porch pirates in the neighborhood. Someone sends footage of a suspicious-looking man to local police. Well, now police are questioning some guy who may or may not have appeared on a porch that day. Some lawyers have said Amazon's commercial interests have led to the perpetuation of racial stereotypes and encouraged overzealous cops. Ring has long said its cameras offer security, convenience, and peace of mind for homeowners, and in recent years, they've installed new policies to help avoid racial profiling, like denying overly broad requests from police. In a statement last night, they told us this new TV show gets permission from owners and anyone else identified in these videos. But if you don't find the humor in watching viral doorbell cam videos because of privacy concerns, well, wait till someone starts a new show about Amazon's latest acquisition, Roomba. My Roomba probably knows better than my wife does about how often I'm snacking on potato chips in the hallway. Like, that's sensitive information. Hey, if you're enjoying the show, hit us up with a rating and review wherever you listen. Tell a friend about the show. Tell the person ringing your doorbell about the show. You could probably do it right now. I'm Brad Milkey. See you tomorrow.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes.